Let's catch up with a man whose political career ended on this day a year ago. Voluntarily, he retired as a Labor MP for the seat of Melbourne Ports in Victoria. Thanks for joining us, Michael Danby. You're 1 year on, hey? How's retirement treating you?
I'm on Zoom and webinars. Before this thing came down, I was speaking all over the world. In fact, I'm very lucky to be back here. I was in Germany at the Berlin Film Festival for 10 days in theatres full of Germans and international visitors just before this started. So busy as anything. The world is like Constantina, Chris. Further away is closer because of Zoom, and people who are close to you are further away.
Yes, things have changed a bit. We'll come to that in a moment. But first up, your reflections on the election win for the coalition a year ago. Is this one that Labor allowed to get away because of their own, I suppose, expansive policies, big climate change action, high tax increases and also extra spending?
I came from an inner city seat, and frankly, we lost our working class base. We allowed our policies to be too focused on hard environmental positions, which lost us the vote in Queensland. It was like the John Hewson election, but in reverse for Labor. We shouldn't have lost it. And I think that Bob Brown column that was sent up to Queensland to tell all of them how stupid they were did more than anything to help us lose that election. But I think the tax on the self-funded retirees really did us a lot of damage too, amongst a lot of older pro-Labor people who would have voted for us otherwise.
Yeah, I'll talk to Matt Canavan about that convoy, the convoy of no consequence, the anti-Adani convoy later on in the program. But given everything has changed because of this pandemic, of course everything has changed. We've now got a massive spending under a Liberal government, massive government intervention. But how would you rate Scott Morrison's performance over this year?
Gee, the opinion polls reflect that he's done pretty well. I didn't think you and some of the more dry economic observers would be happy with this sort of socialist spending, but it's the right thing to do. It just shows that some of the criticism of Labor's much more mild spending during the global financial crisis is a bit sort of overwrought. But they're doing the right thing, and particularly the national interest stuff with this World Health Assembly that's taking place tonight. If he gets 120 votes or this resolution goes through, even though it doesn't mention China, it's what we need to do. We need to stay calm. Australia has led the way since we repudiated the extradition treaty with China, and since we barred Huawei from bidding for the 5G and for the NBN, the world. And we've shown that you can have strong investment and trade with China. Keep your nerve, but Beijing has shown itself to be, as what Chairman Mao said, a paper tiger, blustering and bullying. But the world knows that they have ruined the health of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, and ruined the world economy. From China's point of view, I can't understand it. They had SARS, MERS, and now this COVID-19 has destroyed the economy of all of their customers. Who are they going to export to? Who are they going to sell things to? It's in China's interest, actually, too, that we develop a system across the world, a more robust World Health Organization, perhaps not controlled by some of the people who are so close to them.
Of course it is. It's in everybody's interest. And I think there's obviously that's why you wouldn't name China in the resolution, because you don't want to prejudge where this thing started. We all know it started in China, but let's start with an open slate. Do you see this as a major foreign affairs achievement by Scott Morrison being out on front on this issue and now getting so much support? It
is. And I'm pleased that at least the current leadership of the Labor Party has said it's in favour of international transparency. Albo and Wong have both said that. So that's smart to sort of not have a cigarette paper of difference between the government and them on this. I do think Richard Marles was wrong when he said that people are trying to disengage from China. We should just stick with the same policy that we've effectively prosecuted over the last 5 years. We can have trade and investment with China monitored by the Foreign Investment Review Board. but we're not going to let them come here and bribe politicians of either side. We're not going to let them interfere with their Comintern-style organisation, the United Work Department in Australia. They've got to pull back, as Francis Adams said, in the universities. And I think we can have good investment and good commercial relations with China. China will still buy our iron ore and LNG and coal because they're smart people, commercially adept. It's at the right price. Australians are always reliable and provided on time and on budget.
Now, you talk about Penny Wong and Anthony Albanese being sensible on this. They have been, but Labor's positioning has been undermined by some pretty outlandish criticism that's come out from Andrew Lee, who's used the deputy sheriff term. A former foreign minister, Gareth Evans, has used that term as well. As you know, Bob Carr always runs a strong line that can be seen as pro-Beijing. Kim Carr as well, attacking Donald Trump on behalf of Beijing. Do you think Labor has been too critical and has been seen to toe this Beijing line instead of stand up for Australia's interests and Australia's position?
Well, I always think you look at what the leaders do. So Albo and Wong, as I said, have been smart. You can always rely on the Carr brothers, Bob and Kim Il-Carr, to take a Beijing side against Australia. I think that this crisis has also been very useful, Chris, and I know you've exposed this as well, to show some leading elements of the business community, Twiggy Forrest and Kerry Stokes, to be in more sharp relief. It shows that they're part of the appease China lobby as well.
Sorry to interrupt there, but it's an important point you mentioned, Michael Danby. I think we can all see what Twiggy Forrest and Kerry Stokes have been saying, but we know about their commercial interests with China, so it's very easy to see that they might be looking to protect their commercial interests. What is it that drive Bob Carr, for instance, a former foreign minister no less, and the bloke you've just dubbed Kim Il-Carr? Why are those Labor figures so pro-Beijing when it seems to be against a position Australia's taking?
Well, they have historically believed that there's been a shift in international power relations towards China, and they therefore think realigning ourselves towards them is the smart thing to do. I don't agree with that. I think it's, as you said at the top of the program, Labor should be like the other Democratic Party in Australia, the Liberal National Party, standing for values, standing for democratic values. Traditionally, Labor was an idealistic internationalist party. We should have been sticking up Kim Il-Carr and Bob Carr for the 2 million Uyghurs who are in Muslims, who are in camps. They've never said a word about them. Or what you show just before this segment, those poor democratically elected legislators in the Hong Kong legislature who are being dragged out of the assembly by these pro-Beijing thugs. This is not the kind of world that we want. And let's be clear about this, Chris. It's not our fault. It's not Australia's fault. China has changed. Since Xi became a dictator, since he militarised the South China Sea, since they started to become much more aggressive, and just, wow, isn't it amazing in the last few weeks, these aggressive ambassadors that they've got all over the world. That bloke in the foreign ministry who threatens country by country. It's them that's changed, and we just have to keep our nerve, be calm, keep trading with them, but don't blink. And if we do, and take the advice of the, as I call them, the Carr brothers, Gareth Evans and the pro-Beijing lobby, including Stokes and Forrest, they'll come with more demands. As Winston Churchill said, some people thought prior to the Second World War you could satisfy the crocodile by feeding them other people. He'll come for you last.